Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me today. You guys ask me on a pretty regular basis whether or not I attend a church or some type of faith community and whether or not I have my kids involved in church. I want to do a couple of videos on this topic because I think the issue of whether or not we attend church and how much we allow our kids to be exposed to religion is a tension that a lot of us in the deconstructing world feel. So today I'm going to keep it really simple and just share my story with you. Possibly in the future, if there's interest in this topic, I'll go into more depth on why I left the church and how I think some of the damaging doctrines of religion can affect children. My point in making this video is not to shame anybody who raises their kids in Christianity or any other religion. I do think that you can raise healthy kids in a religious environment. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Talk to me in the comments, like and share this video. Check out my description box for links to my Facebook, Instagram discussion group, and Patreon. When I first became a parent, I was a hardcore evangelical Christian. I know that's probably hard for some of you guys to imagine. My husband began deconstructing months into our marriage when I was pregnant with our first child. This caught me completely off guard, blindsided me, and left me feeling disillusioned and confused. In my anger at not being able to share the most important part of me, my faith, with my life partner, I doubled down in my attempts to pass on my faith to my children. I was determined, if he's not going to do this with me, I'll do it on my own, and I'll do it better. I raised my kids in the church for the first 9 years as a parent. So for my oldest, my daughter, that's been most of her life. She's 10 now. And for my sons, that was up to ages 5 and 6. I was that mother who had my newborn babies in church just days after we were discharged from the hospital, up in the front to get them in the uninhibited presence of God. I had devotions regularly at home. We memorized Bible verses together. We had worship sessions in our living room. Now, while I am just as spiritual, if not more, than I have ever been, and our kids definitely get education and experience in a wide range of religion and spirituality, we restrict the time that our kids spend in overtly religious environments. Why and how did I come to this conclusion? I was raised in a very strict branch of Christianity, which I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel. So if you're unfamiliar with my background, I'll link some videos below. Just briefly, I was raised in what was in some sense a cult-like religious environment. I was taught some very damaging doctrines that God created most of the world's population for the sole purpose of burning in hell forever, that God actually hates sinners, that we are all completely worthless, depraved, and helpless. As you can imagine, the church secluded itself from and judged the rest of the world, and women and children were degraded. This led to a lot of mental and emotional issues. I suffered from severe depression, anxiety, including severe social and performance anxiety. And I was overall just buried in layer after layer of guilt and shame, taught to fear the outside world, so had no social skills or really a desire to connect with other people, and lived in a constant state of fear and dread. I became aware at the age of 14 that I needed to heal. And for the next 3 decades, I went through phase after phase of healing. As soon as I would peel back one layer, there would be another layer to dive into. I did most of this on my own with the help of my own inner guidance, or the Holy Spirit, making use of teachers and tools that I found for free on the internet. And while I had deconstructed the more severe aspects of my religious upbringing, I remained a devout Christian. My experiences throughout my life and prior with the divine had been so real and so prevalent to me that it never occurred to me to question the existence of God, and therefore I never looked outside of my faith for answers. I did reach a place in my life where I felt I am truly healed, I am truly free. And I built what I considered to be a very healthy and thriving relationship with God, free of all the damaging beliefs of my past. So here I am, young mom who's done intense work deconstructing from strict Christianity, healing layer after layer of mental and emotional issues. But I still hold very passionately to the basic tenets of my faith. My husband has completely deconstructed, and I feel alone. I've become a hyper-vigilant church mom, determined to pass on what I feel is a healthy, balanced faith to my children. In fact, I saw myself as a martyr, dragging my kids to church week after week by myself. This continued for about 6 years. As anybody who has undergone trauma knows, there's always a deeper layer to uncover. And when the right life circumstance triggers that layer will come to the surface and become obvious. Well, my husband and I lost our jobs, lost our home for the second time in 3 years, struggling to put food on the table. We found out we were pregnant, which is what we wanted and was absolutely a blessing, but we were worried about being able to provide for not only this child, but our 2 other children. In the midst of all this, my husband fell and shattered his leg, leaving him unable to look for work, and I experienced sickness in my pregnancy. All of this was the perfect catalyst to push me to the next level. The worst in both my husband and myself were brought out, and it was ugly, and it became very clear to me that I still had healing to do. At this point in my life, I began questioning even the most basic tenets in my Christian faith, and this is when I, in fact, began studying near-death experiencers and became a Universalist. So this was about 6 years ago now. As part of this process, I sought therapy for some of the issues that my husband and I were having. Of course, we both had our own issues to deal with, but mine stemmed from a very deeply rooted shame-based, PTSD-like response. I couldn't figure out why I was having these issues. Had I been the victim of sexual abuse as a child and just blocked it out? I knew other people in my childhood church who had undergone sexual abuse. Was there something wrong or broken with me? Did I have a different sexual orientation? These are all things that my husband and I discussed. And as I was sitting in the padded chair across from my therapist, answering her myriad of questions about my childhood, what I had done to heal, and bemoaning the fact that I'm still having these issues after 3 decades of facing my issues head on, being willing to dive in and do the work. What was I missing? Why am I still dealing with such deeply rooted issues that it affects my marriage? And I'll never forget the moment. My therapist looked calmly over at me and said in a reassuring voice, "Well, you know, religious trauma syndrome is a real medical diagnosis. And it doesn't always take something drastic to cause it. It can be something as simple as somebody that you trust when you're in your young, download years of childhood telling you that you are unworthy of love." A lot of times a religious environment can be inadvertently responsible for causing religious trauma syndrome in kids, as well-meaning as they are, and she said it completely without judgment to those who have made this error. As well-meaning as people are, they can inadvertently pass along very negative messages, and a church setting is a prime place for issues like these to develop. Because the underlying message of Christianity is that we are all sinners. My initial response was, that can't be right. If this was true, wouldn't it be common knowledge? Wouldn't people in the church be aware of this and stop teaching this to their kids? But I continued to put in the work. I underwent EMDR for my specific childhood messages. Just really simple ones like, I am unworthy of love, I am worthless, I am helpless. And as I became free of these messages, my life changed drastically. It became very obvious that what my therapist had said had been true, at least for me. The core root of all of my issues in life had been the foundational evangelical Christian teaching that we are all sinners, unworthy of God's love apart from a Savior. I had put in all this work for the past 3 decades to heal all of these other damaging teachings that I had been taught, but I never suspected the most foundational teaching of them all was the root cause on which all the rest were built. At this point in my life, I had to make the excruciating decision of whether or not to continue attending Sunday morning church with my kids. Sunday morning church had always been a foundation of our lives together. It was something we just never questioned. And I was afraid of how it would affect them if I just yanked the rug out from under them, so to speak. And at this point in time, I had been attending church about 5 years into this last stage of my deconstruction. And I had begun to feel like I was living a lie, that I didn't belong and I was being inauthentic by continuing to attend every week. However, there were some aspects of the church that I grieved to lose. The community, the family-like atmosphere, the opportunity for service, and the regular exposure to spiritual teaching and accountability. And there is a lot of good and positive teaching within Christianity. It's definitely not all bad. I was concerned about upsetting my kids' routine, pulling them away from the social interaction and from the friends they had grown up with, pulling them away from the positive aspects of being involved in religion. I didn't want to cause a situation where my kids would look back and say, "That was really hard on me when my mom left the church. That was really traumatic for me." But ultimately, after months of painful consideration, I made the decision, and I say I because remember, my husband hasn't attended church since we've been married. I decided that having my kids in an environment where they were consistently internalizing messages like, "You are a sinner and you need a savior," "Jesus had to die to restore your relationship with God," "We aren't worthy of anything, even love, apart from Jesus Christ." Understanding how these messages had affected me, now in my mid-30s, causing challenges in my marriage, my relationship, and life in general, I could not in good conscience do this to my kids. My intention was never to cut them off from Christianity or shield them from religion. They are still involved in church events, they attend classes with their grandparents, and most of our family and friends are Christian. My husband and I want our kids to be exposed to a wide variety of spiritual practices so that they can be educated and ultimately decide for themselves what is best for them. But what we want to prevent is not exposure, but indoctrination. What that looks like for us is avoiding regular Sunday morning services while they are still in their download years and can't think critically. This also, for us, looks like avoiding immersive experiences like Bible camps, when they're going to be emotionally manipulated and pressured to make a decision. But it also looks like intentionally exposing them to the beneficial aspects of not only Christianity, but other religious and spiritual paths. We still play worship music in our home, but we often have to pause the songs to talk about either degrading or illogical messages. We also meditate regularly and do healing prayer. We still teach the Bible in balance with other spiritual texts. We seek out teachers of various spiritual paths and learn from them. We disregard what doesn't work for us, and we pull out the gold wherever we can find it. We expose them to as much as possible and let them run with what resonates with them. And most importantly, we encourage them to think for themselves. We allow them to be exposed to things that we may not necessarily agree with. We discuss unhealthy beliefs that they may be exposed to. And in that discussion, rather than telling them, well, this is the right way and this is what you need to think, we often lead with questions. What do you think about this? Now compare that to this. And we talk about how to handle it. If they ever find themselves in a situation where somebody is being pushy, claiming to have the only right way, not allowing them to have a voice to question or express their beliefs, pressuring them or threatening them with hell to believe in a certain way. We reiterate over and over that mom may believe this, dad may believe this, so-and-so may believe this, and that's okay. It is healthy and normal for people to disagree because then we can learn from each other. Ultimately, it is up to you to decide what you believe, and nobody, not even mom and dad, has the right to tell you what to believe. And we will support you in whatever religious or spiritual path you choose or don't choose. And I think when this sort of open-minded and respectful parenting is followed, you can raise healthy and well-adjusted kids, both in religion and outside of religion. I'll say this louder for those in the back, even with somebody who has dealt with religious trauma syndrome. Religion in and of itself is not bad. It's what people do with religion that is either good or bad. Religion can be a good and beautiful thing. Christianity specifically is the world's largest religion. Millions of people have found peace and comfort in it. And free-thinking adults can choose and live a healthy life within Christianity or any other religion. Now, this is just my opinion, but I think most of the problems come in when we indoctrinate children into a specific religious dogma, because children don't have the ability to think outside of it and make the choice for themselves. And oftentimes later on in their lives, they will be running subconscious programs, which prevents them from thinking objectively about their beliefs. Right now, for my family and I, the risks of being involved in organized religion outweigh the benefits. I would rather not take the risk that my kids have to go through decades of healing from religious trauma caused by the most basic Christian doctrines. We want our kids to grow up knowing their worth, in touch with their power, mentally and emotionally healthy and grounded, unafraid to do what they came into this world to do. Our goal in raising our kids is for them to be self-aware, strong, fearless, compassionate, free-thinking adults, capable of choosing for themselves what they believe. And while I do hope that at some point in the future we find a spiritual community to be involved in, because I do think that community and relationships are so incredibly important, that is not something that I can find in the church right now. We don't have a lot of options where we live from our open-minded spiritual communities. However, I will be the first to say that if we did, I would be there in a heartbeat. So for now, we take it one step at a time. We focused on raising and nurturing our kids the best we can without the structure and support of a religious community. So that's a little bit of my journey, and that's where we are at right now and how my husband and I have chosen to handle things. But that's just our decision. There's no right or wrong here. Each person should decide for themselves and for their own family what is right for them, while weighing the benefits and the risks of each decision. Once you made the decision, try not to stress about it. Just follow whatever brings you and your family the most peace and what makes sense for you at this time in your lives. If you choose not to attend church, look for a community outside the church and make sure at the very least that you have a strong support system in your family and your immediate friends. If you do choose to attend church, I think that a healthy home environment where the dogma is questioned and counteracted can go a long way to avoiding those pitfalls. Remember that there's never going to be one perfect and right path in this world of duality. Focus on the positives, relax, and enjoy the benefits of whatever path you've chosen. Follow your inner guidance and leave the rest up to the divine flow of life. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.